everybody knows how to do the chat. Hit the chat button. I would like to see in the chat what community groups are represented here. So just put in the chat the name of the community group that you are here for, or if you're not and you're just hanging out to hear stuff, that's cool too. But if you're here as part of community group, I'd like to see those names. That would be cool. There's Susie, Martha, hello. Look at these groups all over the country. This is cool. So yeah, if you just come into the call, put your what community group you're representing over in the chat if you know how to do that. There's a chat button at the bottom that opens up the chat window. Mr. Mathis.
Hey.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
Hi, Bill.
All right. This is great. This is great.
Those bells behind Daryl look familiar.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey Dave.
Howdy. Linda Sims, Mike.
Hi.
It's Old Home Week. This is great. You guys put your community group name over in the chat window so we can see who all we got represented here. That'll be a cool list. So if you're here,
I gotta see how to do it on my phone.
we know you're Suncoast, right, Mike?
Yeah. I'm trying to get my computer going, but rename. Here we go.
There's Lynn from Bells of Sound. Hi, Lynn. We got coast to coast coverage here. This is good.
Ooh.
Okay, where's Linda?
There's Al. So we got VHC. Hi, Al.
Hey Al.
Register your group in the chat window. Then you'll be official. Let's give it a couple minutes for our slowpokes to get here.
We still got a few people joining, so.
Good.
I tried, but it makes you filter everybody through a waiting room. So there's a little bit of a delay.
There's Stevie.
Hi.
Hi, Stevie.
Hi,
Brenda.
Hello.
We got great representation. This is awesome. Yeah, put your if you get the chance, put your group name in the chat window so we can see who all is represented here. Cool.
We got a lot of groups here.
Fantastic. All right. Why don't we get started? Angie's kind of monitoring, then I'll start it off after maybe she gives us a little bit of do's and don'ts or whatever, and then we'll open it wide open.
Well, everybody, thank you for coming out tonight. As Dave said, my name is Angie. I'm a member of the Raleigh Ringers. So we just wanted to get everybody together and kind of talk about what we found works for our organization, hear what you found works for your organization, and share ideas. So if you have questions, you are welcome to ask them verbally, or if you prefer, you can put them in the chat. I know some people don't like to speak out on the video. I do ask when you're not talking, if you'll keep yourself muted. That'll just kind of help keep the background noise down because we're getting to be a larger group. I think that's about all I have.
Okay. And let me just kick things off a little bit. Some of you were on our call last week when we just had an open Q&A and we had some good discussion, great attendance, probably like 70 or so, which was awesome. As the first one of these, and then we talked on there about some other more focused topics. One thing I'd like to kind of stay away from is what we evolved into last week, which was a major discussion of, you know, how we're all going to rehearse and perform in the fall and what our predictions are for, you know, dealing with COVID-19. And the honest truth is none of us have really figured that out really well yet. We have some thoughts and ideas, and but those who play in larger groups that like us, we don't understand how we can do what we do with social distancing. We don't have great answers yet. So we can get really, really wrapped around the axle on that. So I would, you know, maybe at some point we'll have, you know, a whole session on just that with people's ideas. But as we learned last week, I don't think anyone has great answers yet. So maybe we kind of stay away from that. But I think the next couple of these, we want to talk about community group topics. It seemed like in looking at the attendance last week, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the group were part of community groups. So we thought we'd try to have different topics that we can sort of help each other and share ideas with each other. I am very open. Some of you have already sent some great ideas in email. Maybe at the end of this, we'll also open it up to see if you've got some other ideas about topics that we can dig into. But there's, you know, we're just starting. We figured organizational kind of stuff would be a good place to start. But you know, we can do recording stuff. We can do, you know, we'll talk a little audition stuff tonight. We could get way deep into that. You know, staging and all things that we deal with in community groups that we deal less of with in church groups are the kind of topics I think we want to get into, sort of the topics we used to cover in our classes in Pinnacle kind of thing. So Raleigh Ringers, let me just kick it off with, you know, this is our 30th year celebration year, although it's our 31st season of playing. So this was to be a big celebration year, and so far 0 concerts, like most of you, is a hard way to celebrate. So we hope that changes soon, but it looks like through the summer, most of our concerts will continue to push out till the fall of the next year, unfortunately. But many of you know some of the history here, so I won't go too deep into it. But we got started in '90. Up until the time that we were able to purchase a building, we rehearsed and stored our equipment in 2 different retirement centers, which graciously gave us a bunch of space for many years, and we returned the favor by giving them concerts over the years. And we continue to go back and give our one of our retirement centers concerts generally before we go on tour or something. So, and still connect with them some. We park some of our vehicles at their facility and so forth. So, but you know, now that we have our own building and so forth, we're, you know, most of our activities are around, in and around that building. But we got started within about, I mean, we had some bells on loan from Walmart, and by the fall of that 1990, we were able to buy our own, at least put a down payment on a set, and we were off and running. We did have, like some of you I know, have you know, members of your group or acquaintances that can help you with, you know, some of the nonprofit paperwork, which was important to us, and we were able to get that completed within that first year. But when we got started in '90, there really maybe 6 or 8 community choirs in the country. So we borrowed a lot of ideas from other musical groups in the Raleigh area, the Raleigh Flute Association, the Master Chorale, and when it came to putting together our bylaws and how we wanted to structure the organizational part of what we wanted to do, all of us came from church programs, so there was a lot of concepts that we didn't ever have to deal with that were all new to us. So including the whole financial side of things, which is usually covered for us with an umbrella organization. But we got some bylaws down. We got our 501c3 together, and able to take tax deductible donations. Officers have always been kind of the same as far as the working officers within the group: president, a secretary, a treasurer, and then one or a couple at-large members. It wasn't until we got into the group, I would say about 12 or 14 years, till we began to add community members that weren't ringing members to the board of directors. So we have a structure where the executive committee is made up of those officers, which are the kind of the operational part of the group, and they are all members, ringing members of the group. But then we have 3 community members that are not ringing members that are part of the group that help us with activities. We could probably ask them to do even more than what we do, but often when we have, and I know Linda Sims has been deep into this topic a lot, there's often requirements about, helping with fundraising, and usually your board of directors also are required to give a little bit financially to the group as well, and that is part of our requirements also. As far as members of our group, we do annual auditions, which I think a lot of groups do. Some don't. Some have membership by invitation kind of set up. But from our very first year, we've had auditions, and we've always required that past members, even if you've been in the group for lots of years, you still go back through our audition process. So we have something documented, to justify folks that have been in or not in, or have not made the group. That's always important when we look at grants and so forth, that we can demonstrate that our auditions are open to anyone in the community. And it's just that we have some criteria from a musical and a handbell standpoint that we judge people on. But anyone, from the community, we try to advertise as much as we can our auditions so that anyone is actually invited to come audition. It's just we have some criteria that justify you making or not making the group, and that the auditions have pretty much stayed the same over the years. We require a little bit more. We've changed it a little bit, and we require a little bit more for brand new members that have never been in the Raleigh Ringers to do a little more individual of the individual exercises. Everybody does the group exercise, and we also have an interview as part of our audition. So we found out early on in the group that we had folks that maybe weren't as committed to all of the dates that we had laid out on the calendar for the year. So we kind of, in that interview, confirm that all of those weekends and our week-long tour, if we're doing that particular year, are clear on folks' calendar. And that's pretty much a requirement, with a couple exceptions, that every gig you can do throughout that calendar year. We have several members of the Raleigh Ringers on this call as well. Anybody want to add anything else about how we're structured before we kind of open it up to let others share how they are structured? Any other Raleigh Ringers want to chime in today? We have some paid folks too. Ruth Stevens is our business manager. She's on this call, and Emily Graham helps us out in the office with office tasks, and so we've grown in that way over the years too. What did I miss, other Raleigh Ringers? All right.
Dave, I have a question.
Go for it.
How often does it happen that re-auditioning continuing members don't get to continue?
Seldom, but it does happen. So handful of times, I would say, over our 30 years. So, you know, folks move to Raleigh, and you know, and we always, it's the most difficult part of the job. But you know, we look for the top 16, 17 folks that can do this, and that does mean occasionally that will happen, but it's not that often.
Thanks.
I
Dave,
do
we did
think
have
it's important. I'm sorry.
We did have somebody in the chat ask about turnover from year to year.
On average, we probably have 3 or 4 out of 17 every year. And some aren't necessarily brand new to the group. Some have returned after taking a break and so forth. So that's probably on average what our turnover is. I was about to say something, but I forgot what it was. It was about to be brilliant too, I think. But, other Raleigh Ringers want to chime in about our organization? We could go into, you know, all the different committees within the group. I mean, the expectation is when you join the group that you're not only a ringing member, but you're involved in some of the other organizational parts of the group, whether that's helping to deal with our vehicles, helping to deal with our building, staging, finance, sales of, you know, the products that we sell, both at concerts and through consignment and so forth. You know, we have a musicality committee that helps with some extra listening of recordings outside of rehearsal, provides input to me. So we have a number of committees, and really the document that you get at the beginning of the year when we're starting, you know, lays some of that out, that you've really got to choose some areas where you think you have some skills, and we try to match you up with either leading a committee or being on a committee. And you can't just get by without being part of something in there. Maintenance is another committee, so some of our folks deal with you know, with bell maintenance, which is, you know, with all of our sets is a big deal.
We did have a question from Mike Lamb in the chat. He asks, are the elections for specific officer positions, or are they elected at large and then the board selects the officers?
Okay, so what we do at the first rehearsal of the year, correct me if I'm wrong, or is it the second rehearsal of the year? Well, first or second rehearsal of the year, we have election for the president. And at that same time, we designate a nominating committee that comes up with a slate of officers for the rest of the officers, whether they be secretary, treasurer, or the at-large members. And then that is brought to the group for a vote the following week. So that's how our bylaws are laid out with that.
You might notice that we don't have a vice president, and we had one for several years, and then we realized that we didn't really need someone in that position. And if the president is not able to fulfill his or her duties, the secretary steps up to do that.
So we have questions in the chat about term limits. Our bylaws don't state anything about term limits, but all of the positions are 1 year. And most of the positions, except for the outside members, are dependent upon being in the group.
And if you came in late, we want you to register in the chat window what group you're representing, so that we have a good list of all the different diverse groups that we have here tonight. All right, now I kind of spilled all I had. Who wants to talk about contrasting things or ways that their groups are organized. I know we also have some on the call that are brand new to either their community group or they're part of starting a new community group. So I want to make sure everybody knows, you know, the way the Raleigh Ringers did it is one way. There's lots and lots of different ways that you can organize and make all of this happen. So love to hear some other contrasting things of folks that have done things a little bit differently or confirming that they do things similar to what we do.
I'd like to address the question about term limits. This is Al from VHC. What we found was our membership has not changed much in a good amount of time. And we've ended, at one point we had like the same people doing the same job for a number of years. And just the way that our workload went, it just became burnout for some people. So we instituted, I think it's, you can be elected to a 1-year term up to 3 times in a row in the same board position or the same officer. And then you could stay on the board, but would have to be in a different position. Well, we found we were having some burnout issues of the non-ringer job.
And one thing this is timely because Suncoast Bronze we're changing our bylaws and our organization. But when I had Bells in Motion, we did it a little differently. We did rotating 2-year terms, and every other year there were half of the board members outside of myself elected, and we just elected at large, and then the board selected their officers from within the board, which is a lot of like HOAs do it that way, and other groups do it. I know HMA does it electing an officer, but a lot of times the nonprofits, a lot of times you'll elect the board and the board decides who's president, secretary. And then you can also, the treasurer, you can split out because that has to be a little bit more skilled position. And you might not have anyone on the board that can do treasurer necessarily.
Anybody else want to jump in and tell us how you do officers and board of directors and so forth? I got some questions outside of the chat today about, you know, dismissing board members. How do you get rid of a board member? You know, with our outside board members, sometimes it's a mutual thing where they've done it for a couple of years. And then, but we invite them every year to be on there. So we basically, if we're kind of thinking, well, we need to change one of our outside board members, we just invite somebody different that year. So it's not a very stringent process, but it's typically been a mutual thing when someone's ready to go off the board. That's one of the community members.
Dave, when I started Capital Ringers in 2004, we modeled our bylaws, as you probably remember, after yours. And for 16 years, it's been just fine. But a couple of years ago, I proposed, because of the demographics in our area in Delaware, we're in the capital, we live in Dover. The demographics we weren't getting the support. I wasn't getting the volunteers. I wasn't getting the ringers. It just seemed like we were getting nowhere. And so I proposed to the group, put it to a vote, and we moved the group, the base of operations, about an hour south of where I live. We moved to the beach. And in our beaches here in Delaware, great beaches that just kind of opened, we have a lot of retired professionals, from the Baltimore, DC metro area. We went from about 20 volunteers, that's including ringers, to 42.
Wow.
in no time. And suddenly I was faced as the founder, artistic director, like, what the hell are we gonna do with all these people? I can't manage all these people. It's like, what a great problem to have. And it's because my husband's on the call here too. So Jim and I had done some research, and we decided that this was the way to go. And it has become a snowball. And it has continued. And as you know, we recently went through some massive training with with DANA, the Delaware Alliance for Nonprofit Advancement. I had done training years ago with the Delaware Division of the Arts. Every one of you has a Division of the Arts or some sort of go-to for your arts organizations. I had done this many years ago, but when I brought back a lot of those ideas, it fell on deaf ears. And I was literally feeling like I was pushing a boulder uphill. With the change that we've now had in our personnel, and a couple of them, Judy's here on the call too, it changed dramatically. And suddenly I had more professionals who looked at this situation and said, we've got to seize the moment. They organized a task force of 10 individuals who have done massive amounts of heavy lifting to restructure our board, completely revamp our bylaws, and create support teams to replace committees. So gone are the days of the committee, which many people know, and we were talking about burnout. Gone are the days of committee work, so that we're taking away that connotation. It's a support team. We're also opening up to the community like you, Dave, for an advisory council. So we're going to have advisory council members as well. So we are going through this robust change. It was at the onset of COVID-19, but darn if we didn't find the best time to do this, because nobody's got anything else to do. So this has worked out for us to be a blessing. And I am so blessed to have these people who have done this heavy lifting so that we are going to come out of this better than we were ever before.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we too used to have a vice president. And according to the advisors that we had through the advancement training, they said that for us, a group our size, a VP was really overkill. But I would encourage everyone, if you are in a community, we're a nonprofit community group, not just a community group, but I would encourage you to go to your go-to within your state. We're striving towards, it's called Standards of Excellence in Maryland and Delaware and several other states around the country. Many of you probably have that in your own state. And we're striving in that direction, because with that comes the grants. And we've already received some really sizable grants in the past, but we realized that in order to continue on that trajectory, we had to get our ducks in a better row than they were. And so that's what we're striving towards now. But go to your arts organization, whatever that is called in your own individual state. Start there. That was game changer for us.
So to continue on with this, I know that Dave did mention how we attain these outside members, but we did have a question in the chat from Fran asking how many outside members we have each year.
3. For us, yeah, we have 3. Now, how about, I know that there's probably as many different ways of determining membership as there are representatives from community groups here. So, I mean, as far as auditions, what other what other thoughts are there out there as far as, I mean, some of us are in different positions as far as, the bigger metropolitan areas and so forth, and where we draw from. And I know some, like I look at New England there, you guys draw people from many, many states, right? And you have to structure your group a little bit differently. But in order to get some members, sometimes we had to stretch pretty far. But do people do? I mean, I've always tried to be very careful about having a documented way to prove membership, just because I've heard at least one horror story of assumptions made in a community handbell group that a person was, since they weren't reevaluated each year, that they were assumed that they would be a member till they were of retirement age from ringing, and then ended up suing the group for a large sum of money, assuming that they would, that the group was actually getting paid. So I've always, because of that horror story, I've always tried to be real careful about having good documented notes and having a committee. I have typically 2 other folks with myself that do the judging, that do the adjudication, if you will, of the ringing that evening. Sometimes it's been 2 evenings. And we will also do some early evaluation of ringers that want to come in and do some demo recording with us and so forth, if they want to get some feedback before that audition night as well. But I'm interested what other people do for auditions, so tell me some stuff.
I'm here in Kodiak. We don't have the luxury of having metropolitan areas to pull from, but I pretty much give new interested people the 6-week rule. I'm like, within 6 weeks, we'll know between us whether this is going to be a good fit or not. We'll have a conversation. And so usually after about 6 weeks, we know whether that's going to work or not. Because I have to train brand new ringers. So all I need to see is a progression of skill and dedication. It's pretty easy to see after 6 weeks whether or not someone's going to put in some time, because we don't have enough people here to actually do auditions. But I feel like I haven't been wrong when within about 6 weeks my gut is telling me, yeah, not sure about this one. Then we both feel it, so then it's time to cut the cord.
I want to add on to what Ella said. I'm in San Jose, California, so you'd think we would have a ton of handle ringers around. It is a place a lot of people, but for whatever reason, I also sort of mostly get my people through word of mouth. And actually, people Google Handbells Bay Area and find us. I think it's helpful that Bay is in our title because we're Bay Bells. But I've actually just given people just sort of a single ringing lesson, because I often get people who haven't played bells before but are otherwise musicians. So if they're able to pick up bell ringing quickly in that lesson, then they usually do all right in my group, and I assign them easier parts at first. I save the 4-in-hand and the weaving for their second season. But I also, my group lives at a university that I just graduated. I got my master's from, and so I do some recruiting from the College of Music in the university, which has been somewhat helpful and has broadened our audience, and so that's been really interesting.
Hey, I'll jump in. Sorry I was late at dinner. Sorry I didn't bring enough for everybody. But anyway, Austin Handbell Ensemble, we have done it a particular way for, I think, all but 2 of our years. And the 2 years that we did it differently, we tried to do the more objective, fill in the information, of your experiences, and here's some actual tests that you go away and try to figure it out and come back and then play it, solve the problems, that kind of thing. I didn't, honestly, for our situation, it did not seem to work out as well. So we've gone back to the kind of the original, which is worked out well for us. We will have prospective members ring with us between 3 and 4 weeks, and I think 3 is my favorite length of time. During that time, the first session, I just throw that all out the window. It's just, they're usually wide-eyed, bug-eyed that, oh, this is overwhelming. This is not like my church group. And then the next 2 weeks, we pay attention, those that are standing next to them, pay attention to how quickly they pick up new things and how well they retain what they had done the previous rehearsal time. So by the end of that 3rd week, we're pretty comfortable with seeing what's there. It's pretty rare that we find people that are stepping in at the level of our group. But in those 3 weeks, we see the potential and can judge based on that, and as well as personalities and things. So I felt pretty comfortable all along with 3-week evaluation, and then go forward from there.
Have you had situations, Bob, where a previous member maybe isn't cutting it once you've gotten more established and so forth? And how have you had to deal with that?
That actually happened once, that I believe. I think that's all that it really happened in this way, and that was in our 2nd year. We had, first year, 25 years ago, we started with whoever would raise their hand and say, we'll do it. And so we didn't have any kind of audition. It was just, come on. And we had somebody whose personality did not mesh with the full ensemble, and certainly not mesh with some of the ringers. And we pretty much uninvited them to return. I felt bad. I thought that was a weird situation. And ever since then, we've avoided that same scenario. I will say that I've been at it long enough with the group, and we've been fortunate enough to have ringers with longevity with the group that we get their best years. And there are times when they get close to where their skills are kind of having issues. They self-recognize that usually. As a director, I'm in full control of who I put on what part, and I do a ton of score study, and I put people in places where they are going to have a challenge but not be overwhelmed. And we move around all over the tables on every piece as a result. So as somebody's kind of needing to age out, they get less and less of the difficult things, and they catch on and they retire out. It's worked out.
There's got to be some other ideas out there.
At Bells of the Sound, we do auditions. Once you audition, you're in for life or as long as you want to be. But the way that it seems to work is that we audition and we may or may not have a position open. And so then if there is no position open, then the person goes on our substitute list, and we invite them in when we need a substitute, and they come and ring with us sporadically. And then we get a feel for how they ring and beyond what the audition looked like. And then what we do is that if there is a position that opens up, we're interested in them, we will offer them what we call a long-term substitute position. And so then they ring with us for a single season, so either the fall or the spring season. And then at the end of that term, if there is a membership position open, then we can offer them the position, or they can continue on being a long-term sub if we have concerns with, that they're almost there, but they're not quite there. or they can say no. Well, we can both say, it didn't really work for us, or it gives them a chance to see what it's like to bring in our group and how it can be fairly intense and have some serious commitments to it. They don't have to be involved in the administration of the group, so they don't have to deal with their committee assignments. But once you become a full member, you have to deal with committee assignments as well. So the long-term substitute period gives them a chance to see what it's really like and see if they're interested in continuing with us.
We did have a question in the chat. Long Island Resound asked if most people keep the same positions or do groups move people around for each song?
Ours matches what Bob said. We change a lot. So we move around. And the other thing is we have, it kind of started by accident, but worked out really well. We have more members than ring in any individual song. So we have a built-in substitute system where if we do have an emergency, generally we can cover that, whether it's rehearsal or performance. Hopefully that's not often, but especially rehearsal time, we can cover that within the membership of the group. Yeah, I'd be interested in how others deal with substitutes. And
I do all of that the same. Brenda Austin from Detroit Handball Ensemble. And even with my church group, I do, just like Bob said, I really study the score and try to match abilities with the music, so you don't have somebody in tears and you don't have anybody bored. And I do that with Detroit as well as with my church ensemble. And I also try to I have 16 ringers in my church choir for that same reason, because somebody broke their arm and then we've got somebody to step in.
Yeah, I move people around all the time too. And I think that gives you a chance to move people into areas they aren't that comfortable with on an easier piece. So if they're four in hand or they don't do four in hand very much, maybe you've got an easier piece that's B6, C7, four in hand spot, they can kind of cut their teeth a little bit and get a little practice on that spot with that.
Yeah, I do want to throw in that I feel like there are three zones on the table. The four in hand area, that takes a special skill set. The low bass range takes a special skill set and physical skills, and everybody else can be more and more interchangeable. So yeah, we shift around pretty much in those zones. I will throw things into a different layout completely for certain pieces. But I try to do it that way. And in general, we try to run with 15 ringers. I know at Baylor, I've run with 18 or 19 once, I believe. And a solution I found, instead of sitting people for that, was to borrow another set of bells and duplicate positions, so we have a huge layout. So I've done that at Baylor. I've not done that with Austin handbells specifically. I do try to just have one person per position.
I wondered, Bob, when you were talking about your 4 to 6 week period of time for evaluation, do you have periods of time in your year that you don't have any concerts that you can do that? Or could that be happening at a time where you're kind of, this new person is, you're pretty much hoping they are going to make the concert in 6 weeks? Or how does that work?
Well, we generally have, in our case, we generally have December concerts and May/early June concerts and nothing else. So we're not like a Raleigh Ringers going on tour kind of thing. So it works out for us. We have two audition seasons, if you will, early, all of August, closing out first week of September-ish, and in January. And in our case, we have for many years done demo recordings for publishers. So I use some of those pieces with these auditionees, and in some cases I let them come in and do the recording with us as well, just kind of wrap up how are they doing with the group. So we're able to do that, and it's been a good cycle for us.
Yeah, I'm interested. I see a question in there regarding section leaders. And we've never done that kind of thing. We've done a little bit of that with Virtuoso to help run our sectionals and so forth. But do other groups do that? Do you have some leadership within the different sections of your group? From a ringing perspective, I know we've got the officers that we deal with, but from a ringing perspective, team leaders or section leaders, who has had a good experience with that?
So I have three section leaders: high bells, battery, and buckets. And before our downbeat on Monday nights in rehearsal, section leaders work on wherever they need to work, so we can use our valuable rehearsal time as ensemble in ensemble ringing. And they're taking notes prior rehearsal, or from my notes I pass out the next day on what went down the night before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Lori Pyle. I'm president of Bells of the Lakes, and we do have section leaders, 3 section leaders as well. We use our section leaders to run any of our sectionals. So if, for instance, rehearsal is designated as a sectional night, then we'll split into 3 different areas, and our leaders will run the sectionals.
Anybody else use that concept differently or use it at all, section leaders?
We formed a new, very small community choir called Wild Ring here in New England, just for certain events. So it's a very different model. It's I'm also in Merrimack Valley Ringers, which is more of your typical community group, but we put together this group from, ringers from all around New England with the purpose of ringing at Area 1, where we only had 2 rehearsals together. So we did section leaders, and each section had 1 or 2 rehearsals before, so because we were putting it all together so quickly. So that's outside of what most people are doing as far as the typical community group. But for that purpose, we were trying a new model. It's a lot of us who wanted to do some more ringing, and for a specific event. And we did an event in Hartford also. So we used that model those 2 times.
Yeah, Kendra makes a good point that groups like ours, and I mean, somebody with few exceptions, people are in different positions and move throughout those different sections of the bells. So it's like when we do Virtuoso, you've got your assignments for the entire concert, and then we can have section leaders and we can have sectionals to work on many different pieces. But we sometimes have a challenge when we do sectionals because we want to do 2 different pieces, and somebody's in both of the different groups that needs the sectionals, and it's not always split between the same people. The same people are in treble or in bass, so it does make that a little difficult. But looking at some of the other questions out here.
So somebody in the chat asked about contingency in case a director has an emergency or has a medical issue.
Yeah, it's pretty much just not allowed.
I think that's in our bylaws.
I mean, we had a situation a couple of years ago where my back went out really bad, and we had coverage within the group of folks that fortunate enough to have several folks that could conduct, and we had it split up that if I didn't make it through that weekend, that they would cover it. Fortunately, I made it through on a stool all weekend, and had surgery somewhere after that. But we have had an assistant director a couple different times within the group. We haven't recently. It's kind of if a person is interested and if they're maybe want to be involved, but not, in the case when we had Corinne Krautheim, he wanted to still be involved in the group, but didn't want to ring, and was very helpful. He helps us at audition times. And when we started the Raleigh Ringers, Paul McElveen was the assistant director and did direct at least one concert that I couldn't attend early on, but we haven't had an assistant in a little while, but I think it's a good thing to do to have some backup there. We also, when you're talking about assignments, I delegate my base assignments just like we do in Virtuoso, which Al is well aware of, and Wayne is well aware of if he's still on, to let the bass ringers, different members of the bass work out those specifics, since they're vastly different from piece to piece. And there's a lot of extra studying, and I have found that the folks that have their hands on the bells down there know best who can lift what where when we're dealing with some of the heavy lifting. So I delegate a lot of that down there to different members. Sometimes it's Keith Burt, sometimes it's others that are down in the bass that help work that out. We're going through something this year. Some of you are involved in Virtuoso, but Allison and our group had the idea, and I think it's a good idea. So when we teach folks in Virtuoso, when we play together our final piece, we document quite thoroughly exactly what we do in Stars and Stripes Forever, for instance, so that when we come together in Raleigh, we have a good blueprint, if you will, of the logistics of how the table should look and who shares what, where, and so forth. And at some point we said to ourselves, why don't we just do that for ourselves? When we bring a piece of music back that we haven't played for a number of years, we often are referring to video, saying, well, who got that bell here? We have some of it marked in our music, but not all of it. And so we're on it's kind of one of our exercises while we're not ringing in rehearsals, is looking at what our current repertoire is and starting to do more documentation, so that when a piece is brought back in a number of years, we're not starting from scratch, and we're not studying video to look at who did something in what position. We have it written down a little bit more thoroughly. So that's kind of a new thing for us that we're experimenting with.
Hi, everybody. Good morning from Singapore. We're nearly 8 a.m. here.
Good morning.
Singapore, between Malaysia and Indonesia in Southeast Asia. Just very quickly, we've got 73 members in our members list, and we don't conduct auditions. We invite them in for a 3-session trial, and the trial is being observed by the fellow ringers. I won't make that decision because most of them, or in fact all of them, are trained ringers, where we draw from the schools that we teach in to give them an opportunity to continue handbell ringing after they leave schools. In the Ministry of Bells, or MOB for short, in Singapore, we receive yearly fundings, tons of paperwork to be done for proposals and reports, of course. We receive fundings for our annual concerts, which usually happens in January. And these fundings allow us to invite foreign guest ringers and foreign guest conductors every year. And we've been doing this since 2016. Our group started in 2007. So from 2016 onwards, every concert we get a couple, or if not maximum, we had 4 guest ringers. One coming from as far as Puerto Rico, which was really cool because she took more than 30 hours to get to Singapore. That's, some of you might know her, Lynette. Lovely, wonderful person, to a friend, yes. Ringing, we move the ringers about so that they don't stick to the same spot for 2 songs consecutively. This trains them and gives them an opportunity to experience different parts and different assignments, especially when we're dealing with a lot of younger ringers. Our ringers age between 9 years old through 45 years old. That's right. Now, we don't have sectional ringers in our, sectional leaders, sorry, in our ensemble, but it depends on which song we are playing. So for certain songs where the basses need additional practices, we will identify an individual, who is usually the strongest ringer there, to run a sectional on a separate session. That's right. and because our team is rather big, we do have 3 types of memberships. We call it the active, the flexi, and sabbatical. We've almost got 1/3 of each, very pretty much balanced out. Sabbatical meaning they could go for major examinations, and then they would ask to come back a year later without having to go through the trial system again. Flexible because they are either working or they are new young mothers who need to take care of their child and they can't attend weekly practices, so they ask for flexi membership, whereby they could come in as and when they could ring. They will come in that weekend. Active membership, they are expected to come every week. So each week we get about 20 ringers coming for rehearsals. So that allows us to double and certain times allow us to triple parts in our studio and in the concert. Thank you.
That's great.
We did have a couple questions in the chat that surrounded funding. Some asking what are the principal funding areas, best ways we found to get money in, do we do dues, performance fees, fundraisers, etc.
I mean, I can answer quickly for us on some of those, but I really almost think that could be a topic for a whole session sometime. Yeah, we do a little bit of, we have had a little bit of success with grants, not as much as I'd like, so we're continuing to try different avenues with that. You know, most of, you know, our concert fees fund a lot of what we do. So, you know, when people asked last week in the Q&A about that, we have a certain fee that we ask for, and then we ask the host to, whether it's through offering or tickets, to make up that fee, and anything additional goes back to the hosting group. Some product sales, so CDs and of course tie-dye gloves and that kind of thing. But you know, probably the largest portion comes from our concert fee for us. But I really think that could be a subtopic for a whole session, unless somebody else wants to jump in there with any fundraising thoughts. But that's, you know, we've also had bake sales and car washes and you know, poured concessions at our local outdoor concert arena, and early on did a lot of those kinds of fundraisers too. Well, I'd say we should look at that for a separate topic sometime.
Hey, I've got a topic that I've wondered about for a very long time, and there's just not a holding area for this kind of information. But people do move, and they move from city to city or even state to state. And when people move, or when they graduate from universities, or when they graduate from high schools, whatever, there are opportunities for them to get lost in the system and lose out. I've always wanted to see a clearing zone, a master list, if you will, of people who are moving and maybe going to another area, and be able to find a group to look at. I mean, we've sent several emissaries to other groups in our years, and we've received a few back, but I think we've sent more than we've received as it is. But it would be nice to know if, I don't know, whoever has a member that's you know, very good, and they're going to be losing them, and they're moving to Austin perhaps, and that'd be really nice to hear, so, or to see it in a master list.
Yeah, I mean, we all have informal ways. We just kind of like you and I, Bob, we've shared those kind of emails before, and you know, we have folks, you know, whether it's the good old handbell L we used to all be on, or if it's, you know, through social media today where some of us post things about ringers coming to different areas. But nothing formal. Yeah, I mean, you know, something maybe the guild could do, or good
Well,
thought.
I think some of that is already handled either, like you said, through social media, but I know people have contacted the guild's regional membership coordinators, who then pass it down to the local area, who then may pass it down to the local state, et cetera, that way. So certainly not formalized, but I think it's being done. I know I did my part. One of my ringers is going to South Carolina. I'm going to make Marsha Brantley quite happy in the fall. But I think I'm sure we all, you know, take our turns doing our part and helping out.
Well, I also see this, and this doesn't help directly the community level, but being at a university as well, you know, when I go to the freshman orientation sessions, it is set up so that I get to lay eyes on every individual freshman that is coming to the university, but I'm at a table, and it's a passive kind of recruiting, in that as they pass by my table, if they give me a second glance, I try to reach out and connect with them. Otherwise, they go on, and I know that there are incoming students who were in fabulous church groups who are silent at that moment, and I lose them. So one of the things I keep hoping for is, the directors of church groups in particular, of students who are going to universities, can find and pass along contact information and try to help bridge that time where we lose a lot of future ringers. Those people do graduate, and they do jump into community groups eventually, we hope. But I think there's another need there as well.
Dave, I had a question for you. This is Lori with Bells of the Lakes. Sorry, I was late to the party. You may have already answered this. I forgot about the time change between Minneapolis and Raleigh. But how are groups funding community members to sit on the board? And what kinds of people and who do you recruit for outside board members?
How are we funding them? I mean, they're volunteer.
No, I'm sorry, finding them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably, if we looked at each one of the folks that have been on our outside community folks on our board, we probably found them in different ways, whether they were folks that were, you know, part of other church groups that were very active, that did a little bit of bells. In one case, we have somebody on our board who's got a financial background, but also came to our concerts and expressed a lot of interest in what we did. You know, we've had accountants that have been on our board that also help us, you know, with some of our paperwork and some of the things we've had to do with grants and so forth, that have been part of the board. So certain skills are recognized and needed, and we'll, you know, see that and see someone's interest, and then just ask them to be on the board. So
I was going to say, it sounds like it's mostly word of mouth and who knows who.
With us, yeah. With us, that's how it's been. It's acquaintances through coming to our concerts and showing interest. We don't want them to be in our board and have it be a chore. We want them to be, you know, passionate about what we do. So, you know, generally these are folks that have either been to our concerts or really know about our group and what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's not like we have, you know, we put out any feelers and look for it. It's usually something that hits us by somebody that's had contact with somebody.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, Linda and Jim, I mean, with the community, I mean, you had a deluge of volunteer folks that help you guys out.
Yeah, and I can add to that too. We became acquainted with a gentleman who is really going to take the bull by the horns and really raise the funds for us as far as corporate sponsorships go. But so we're kind of on the cusp, we think, of great things. We're at least optimistic that way. But he encouraged us to start to look at company websites in our neighborhoods, in our communities, because a great number of them, I forget what percentage it was that Dave said, but a different Dave, said that a large, I think it was almost like 60% of businesses have some sort of something on their website that implies that and obligates them to working with the community, to helping their communities. Because that's really what we're about, is trying to make this world a better place through our music, trying to brighten someone's day and to try to make a difference. So that's what we're looking at, is other companies that are in our region that would have that kind of skin in the game, would have that kind of interest. And then if there's an accounting firm, a lawyer firm or whatever, then we'll go to them and see what they can offer us. So it's going to require some legwork. It's going to require a little time for all of us, but we at least have latched onto someone who's willing to start to do that for us.
In a manner of speaking, this is Jim Sims here. It's partnering with folks in the community, and this gentleman that Linda's talking about, who's only recently been with the group, has come with some fresh ideas, is putting out ideas which our task force is embracing and presenting to us on the board, towards partnering with other nonprofit and community groups, as well as with businesses, in the spirit of community service, in this case through music, and specifically handbells and hand chimes in particular.
And I have to say too, I noticed what Damien had said. Hi, Damien. About partnering. A lot of our grantors, and I'm sure I'm speaking for any of the grantors that are in your neighborhoods too, our grantors are looking for partnering. Who are we partnering with? What are the partnerships? And we have discussed among our group and our task force and others within our organization that we're going to take advantage of this situation right now to reach out to others who are also struggling like all of us are, to say, you know, what the hell is going to happen next, because we don't know, like Dave said. But we can partner with each other, and by doing so, being COVID informed on what we're doing with this pandemic and not, we can move forward and help each other. And by doing that, grantors love that kind of thing. So that also opens the potential for other doors to fly open for us.
So we had a question from Fran in the chat about how do we use outside board members? Do the outside board members have a vote in the day-to-day organization?
In our group, our executive committee sort of runs the day-to-day operational things, and our outside board members are required twice a year for higher level organizational structure, like our budget. They'll be, everyone has to vote on the budget, the annual budget, and so forth. I think there's a couple other requirements of things that they have to vote on, and they're optional for our more for our executive committee operational type meetings, and often they do come, but they generally aren't as involved in those kind of topics, how we run our events and how we run, concert tours and those kinds of things, that we might get down to those kind of details.
So your community members only attend twice a year?
They're only required to.
Okay.
They often do drop in when they are, some of them are pretty busy. When they are available, we've had them drop in several other times during the year, but they're only required at our spring and late fall board meetings when we have specific things they vote on.
Our challenge has been burning out our community members by having them attend meetings where we deal with a lot of minutia and things that they're not that interested in. And so we'll find them kind of tiptoeing out of the room, you know, quietly. And so to keep them engaged and to keep them specifically involved in certain things has been our challenge.
Yeah, there's a lot of details that we run through in our executive committee meetings that really those folks aren't as involved in or as interested in. So,
right.
Yeah.
What are the positions on your executive committee?
Those are basically the officers, the president, secretary, treasurer, music director, and it's one at large, right? Two at large, and business manager comes to all the meetings, but she doesn't vote on items. But that's usually is in those working meetings, those executive committee working meetings. No, don't want this to go on way too long. Does anybody, over an hour already, hour and 10 minutes? I think we can begin to get topics. So the question is, who sits on our board of directors is the executive committee plus the 3 outside board members make up our board of directors. That question in the chat. So it seemed like fundraising and the financial ends of things could be a topic for a week. What other things you want to throw out there, and then we'll see we talked some about recruiting, but I don't know if that's a topic for a complete session or not. It seems like there's probably a lot about the actual performances that we put on, whether that is programming, you know, where we get some of our repertoire. You know, some folks have themes around some of their concerts and so forth. So I think there can be some things we could talk about the actual content of our concerts at some point. What other, any other things you guys want to throw out? Best way to find venues, I see in the chat session.
I'd be interested in discussing more how you manage sectionals, depending on your rehearsal space and not wasting time. When you have moving membership, it's hard to have a base sectional, for example.
I know.
If, you know, everybody's moving around a lot. So, and if you only have one room that you rehearse in, how do you manage that? Do you make everybody take a break? I mean, those would be kind of interesting things that I'd like to hear more about.
And that kind of relates. I know we said we weren't going to do a lot of discussion about the COVID stuff, but you know, some people have suggested, you know, bring your bass in one week, bring your treble in, and you know, and keep them pretty spread, and to try, you know, in our group with, and sounds like you guys, and I know Bob's, you know, I mean, we move around. You can't do that, right? You might be in every one of those songs because you're in the treble in one and the bass in the other, and so that's we can kind of split things in 2 rooms where we are and do some of that, but yeah, there must be some good ideas for maybe how to pull that off. What are folks from some of the other groups want to chat about in future sessions? Any other, I know that for established groups, we've talked a lot about some of the basics that you guys already have under your belt. So this was kind of what we wanted to do for the first one, but
what about advertising, social media, marketing, that kind of thing.
Ooh, that's good. PR and yeah. Yeah, that's excellent.
Dave, what about ways that the collective wisdom here can, I know we do it kind of informally on Facebook, but to have a discussion about other ways we can help each other. And one thing came to mind too was when we do have auditions and we would like to have an impartial person or two view a video of a ringer, it might be helpful for me to be able to contact one or two people in this collective group to say, hey, could you take a look? I'm between ringer Y and ringer Z. Can you kind of take a look at this and see what you think? It'd be nice to have that kind of relationship where we could tap each other for ideas and resources. We're all out here doing the same thing, or at least dominantly are in the same mode, you know, to try to keep ringing alive. We're the ones that take it outside the four walls, most of us at least, and it would be great to continue to build it strong. I don't know how many of you still hear, oh, handbells. I still hear that where I go once in a while. It's not after they've heard our group, but it is after they've heard some others. So, yeah, you know, we'd like to continue to raise the bar.
You know, last week we ended up talking a little bit about, you know, do we want to think this group of folks, you know, we used to have an event called Pinnacle, right? That we had days to share like this, deep into topics and experts from outside of the handbell world. What I felt at the time was a really needed thing, and it kind of faded into the woodwork. So at some point I would like to talk to folks about whether that's a needed thing, and whether, I mean, just sharing concerts with each other was one of the coolest parts of Pinnacle. You know, whether that's something we want to try to resurrect, because we really don't have that many opportunities to, you know, to get together and we can learn so much from each other. So, all right, well, there's.
So Dave, real quick, what if in this format, because we're going to be here for a while, what if any one person here in the collective group knew someone who was really great with social media, marketing, yada, yada, and we invite that person into this Zoom call. And we ask them to kind of give us some ideas, some pointers, that kind of thing, or on a different topic, or, you know, whatever. What if the collective group here had a few great golden nugget people we could invite into this forum and have what we used to have at Pinnacle, but we do it virtually?
I think that's a great idea, yeah. Well, we'll try to.
I think this kind of format is probably leans itself towards doing a Pinnacle topic or series of topics. I think directors of community groups, there's just not enough of us to make a go of it for a national event for just us. So I think the best we can hope for is technology plus a wing at national that we could maybe have. That's all I add.
Yep. Oh, I think that's good. All right. Well, email me if you've got some other thoughts and ideas, and we'll try, you know, towards the end of this week to let you know what we're going to try to try to keep doing this on Monday nights. I know it's not perfect for everyone, but we're now in kind of a little cadence here, a little routine. So we're going to try to keep this time slot set aside if we can. But really had lots of great participation tonight. So anything else anybody wants to throw out there? If not,
is there anywhere in particular that you're going to announce this? I mean, like what the topic is? Are you sending out another group email, or is it on Facebook? Or
it'll definitely be on Facebook. I threw together a quick distribution list and sent it to a bunch of directors I knew. I know I missed lots of people this week, but we thought the first one I would make sure I hit a lot of directors that I've come across over the years. So we'll probably do that again, and I'll expand the list with some of the folks I see on here. But if you watch our Facebook, Angie's good with keeping all that up to date. So
was that through the Raleigh Ringers page, or I didn't ever see it on Facebook?
Yeah, Raleigh Ringers.
Okay.
Where did you put it somewhere else too, Angie?
It was there, and then it was on Handbell People on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, the thing about the Facebook groups though is that you make the announcement and then it gets buried. So if somebody skips a day, it's they don't get the message. I don't know of a good solution to that, but just that is part of the nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for doing this. It's just really a cool time to connect with people.
Yeah.
Lots of great minds.
Let's make it as useful as we can. So give me ideas, and again, if you send me an email, I started a little distribution list. I can make sure you're on it in the future, and you get an email as well from me each week. I did a quick spray of a bunch of people, and it looks like we got quite a few, but I know I missed tons. So if you want to be added to my little list, I'll just do it through email, and also watch social media as well. Then we'll get as many folks as we can. And again, there may be weeks of topics that you're really not interested in. All that's fine. Just drop in. We'll keep this totally informal, but we're all going nuts without connecting to anyone. So this is kind of fun.
Right. This helps to stay connected, keep the energy high.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, it is fun. Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming. I guess we ready to wrap up, Angie?
I think we are, and crossing our fingers that the recording worked well tonight, and we'll get that up as long as it happened. And like Dave said, you can send him any questions or send him a request to get on the email list. And I put his email in the chat. I'll put it in there again. But thank you everybody for coming, and have a great night and stay safe. Or I guess Damien, have a great day.
Thanks, Raleigh.
Bye.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye all.